Hey guys, so I'm super blessed to have the opportunity to be able to sit here with Brett Ekart from United Metals. Good morning, Brett.
Thanks for thanks for the tour this morning. It was awesome.
Good, man.
You got a nice yard. You guys, you should be proud what you got.
Thank you very much for coming out and spending some time with us, man. I think that, again, I truly do echo that statement of like being truly blessed to have you here, and you taking the time out of your busy schedule and thinking of us, because I know you got a lot of things going on there, over at United. So
well, it was late notice, but like I said, man, I kind of was headed this way, and I'm like, hey, if you're gonna be around, I know it's one of those deals. I mean, if you're gonna be there, I'll definitely make the effort to come up and say hi. But
yeah,
like I was telling you last night, my biggest thing is I just love being around hustlers, man. Like you got hustle, like, and that for me is big. Like people out there trying to get shit done, and like. So
I think it's
who you are. You surround yourself by.
I think it's the dying breed, man.
There is something to be said. Like take the scrap business even out of the equation. Like I think a lot of people out there lack hustle,
right,
which I'm okay with because it just creates a ton of opportunity if you got it.
Right.
So I'm not mad, I guess.
So I think like, if anybody follows you or if anybody watches you and your content on social media and things like that, like you're usually the interviewee, right? Like you're usually out there and you're like, so tell me the story, tell me the saga, tell me the drama of what's going on in your life. So I wanted to flip the script on you because I think that you got like a really unique story, and I wanted you to tell me the story of United, and I want you to tell me like, it's a really interesting story that, you shared with me last evening, and I thought that it would be something that I definitely would want to, be able to share.
Do you want like the Cliff Notes version, like the quick one?
As deep as you want to go, brother.
So my grandfather started United Metals in 1972. He had a partner who was a judge at the time in Caldwell, just this little kind of old school scrap yard in Caldwell, Idaho. They had a little yard in Nampa. My grandpa was kind of an entrepreneur, not a super educated man, but very entrepreneurial, probably a 6th grade education. Him and this judge put together this deal. The judge was significantly older than him, so they started United Metal and Scrap Company, Inc. And after a couple years, the judge was getting on the older side, wanted out, retired. And so my grandpa bought him out, and then he kind of had his sons and daughters, everybody kind of in the business for a while. My dad being one of those people, my uncle, their brother-in-law, my aunts were kind of at some point involved, whether they're in the scale house or doing whatever. And then they ran it that way for a long time, just a little scrapyard. They closed the one down in Nampa and just had the little yard in Caldwell. They wanted to grow, so the guy that owned the pipe yard, Treasure Valley Pipe at the time, it was a kind of a defunct pipe business, so he was willing to sell him the land and the business at the same time for just enough to get out of it. So we acquired Treasure Valley Pipe at that time, and we didn't really do a lot with it until probably, we had a little bit of a pipe business, but we didn't really do a lot with it until like probably 2004 when I came on full time. But before that, my grandfather was ready to retire sometime in like 1997. My dad was like, and him were starting to butt heads enough where it was like, okay, you need to retire and let me take over the reins because I want to grow this business. So by this time, my uncles and aunts and everybody had moved on. It was just my mom and my dad in the business. My mom was the CFO. My dad was running the operations day to day. So they partnered with Schnitzer Steel in 1997. Schnitzer Steel bought 50% of United Metals. And at that point, they kind of gave us enough money to buy, they loaned us enough money to buy a Sierra shear, which was our first shear in Caldwell.
Is that a plug for Sierra today then?
Literally Schnitzer was the one that gave it, and Sierra was the one that sold it. So yeah.
So we're plugging Schnitzer and Sierra today.
And I will say this though, for Sierra, here's a plug for Sierra. We still run that shear today.
Yeah.
So that was 1997. So if you want a plug, there's a plug. That fucker still runs every day. So we partnered with Schnitzer. We were partners for almost 20 years. 19 and some change. We bought them out. We bought them back out in 2016. My mom and dad retired in 16. My dad was probably kind of working on retirement a little bit before that. And through the process, we've added yards, we've added, auto salvages and scrap yards in Idaho and Oregon. So, and grew the pipe side of our business. But that's kind of like the Cliff Notes version of, kind of where we started and where we're at. My dad is pretty entrepreneurial guy. He was able to kind of help get things going. Once Schnitzer got involved, they were able to grow, add a couple roll-off trucks. That's kind of when we started the actual commercial side of our business. And from there, man, it's just been every dime we made, we've shoved right back in it. That's how we got to where we're at.
I'm glad you brought up money though, right? Because I think you and I have a similar problem in terms of the companies that we lead, right? Which is the optics, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about talk a little bit to me about how people believe everything was handed to us from our fathers. Tell me a little bit about that, because you got some resentment there, right? Because people don't really know the struggle, and I don't think that they understand that to be the case for United Metals.
Yeah, but my thing was, and you and I had this conversation last night at dinner, but like I was blessed with really good parents. Like really good parents by being people that taught me how to hustle, people that taught me respect, they taught me, how to invest back in my business, they taught me all the right stuff that in my opinion, that you should teach your kids. You don't give your kids anything, you earn it. You give them the opportunity to earn it. And that was always the way it was stated for me. I was a pretty decent student in school. Nobody in my family had ever went to college. Like nobody, extended family, no cousins, no mom, dad, no uncles, nobody. Like nobody ever even fucking stepped foot. So when I was in school, I was decent at school, and I was like, I want to work in the office someday, because I was always either run a cutting torch or run the recycling center, buying aluminum cans or brass or whatever's come to the door. And I told my dad, I'm like, I want to work in the office, and he's like, well, then go to college. And he's like, you'll never work in the office unless you go to college. I think that was his way of saying, go do something different than like what we did, right? Like go learn another way of doing business. Like I learned by my dad, he learned, down so far down the line. So I went to school. I played football in college.
Which college?
Eastern Oregon and at Southern Oregon University. So it was kind of a motivating factor for me to go to college. I wasn't in love with the idea of going to school, but I liked playing football. So I'm like, screw it. If I'm ever gonna get into the office, I better figure out, So I went and got my undergraduate business degree, and came back to work. And when I came back to work full time in 2004, we had our yard in Caldwell, our scrap yard in Caldwell, and then we had a little yard in Mountain Home. And so we just started grinding. I came to work full time. My dad now had some help. Then I started recruiting guys that I went to school with or knew, or started meeting guys my age, which I got lucky because at that time, it was just the beginning of the 04 to 08 cycle, the 06, 07, the good run up. So I could show people like, hey, this is a legit business. Right. You can make some money. Like this isn't like the old school scrap yard mentality. Like we're actually going to run a fucking business and we're going to make money. Right. And so I was able to recruit people my age at that time into the business. Yeah. So then when we were doing that, it was kind of gave us the help that we needed. And I'd always tell my dad, I'm like, we need to grow. We need to put a yard here. We need to put a yard there. And his biggest question to me was always, well, who's going to run it? Right. Who are you going to trust? Who are you going to put in front of the cash box and on the scale and this and that?
But go back to 15 when your dad's, kind of fully exited now and you have full responsibility. And Schnitzer Steel comes to you and tells you like, hey, like, you're going to go bankrupt. Like this company is broke. Like, yeah. And that's why ultimately Schnitzer Steel wanted to exit is they didn't see a path forward with you. They didn't see a financially sustainable company for the long term. And so that's where I go back to these optics of where everything was handed to Brett Ekart.
Yeah, and in 2004, people that remember like they've been in the scrap industry, 14 wasn't bad. 15 was a hard year. Like it was like death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, every time you turn around, it's like down 5, down 10, like down 20. Like it just never could find a bottom in the scrap price. Well, I'd hired all these people over the years and built up a business. We at that point, I think we had 5 yards And so we brought all these people in the fold, told them, hey, you're going to have a good career, like, stick with us. And, the stuff you want, how you build a business, right?
Right.
And then now the scrap price is just going to hell. Everything's starting to kind of crater. And we didn't let anybody go.
Yeah.
We just kept them on. And we were losing money.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were partners with a publicly traded company. And publicly traded companies, whether you're in the scrap industry or the chair making industry, they run differently, than privately held companies.
Right.
Privately held companies were more long-term focused, and public companies are quarterly driven. And I think there was some things in place for them to basically divest, like certain partnerships, certain relationships, and they even shut down a couple of their own yards. I think they shut down a Canadian yard that they had, at least a shredder up there. Right. They were doing some real hard divesting, and we were on the chopping block.
Right.
So they gave us an opportunity to buy them out, to buy our 50% back out. And so my dad said, "You'll never get that deal done. That's too big of a company. You'll fight the lawyers and everybody else for." At that point, my dad was ready to be done.
Yeah.
He'd already been done. He was, and so I was like, well, all I can do is try.
Right.
And so my CFO, Brian, and I, we just started going to work, run the numbers, here's what we can afford, here's what we can't, and then we kind of went back and forth. And luckily, I will say this, Kirschman and Mike Henderson were big parts in basically keeping the relationship alive, but we could still sell scrap.
Right.
And still keep the relationship between Schnitzer and us, and give us a shot to exit, and where everybody felt like nobody got a great deal, but everybody got something that they could walk away with, right?
Right.
So then from then on, man, it was just, then Donald Trump got elected and things changed for a little bit, the market got a little bit better. So.
But that was really you, and that was really your doing, as opposed to this legacy company that was so established and so financially strong. You were literally in 15, the company was literally having the assessment from all of the, all the financial advisors that Schnitzer has that this is going to be a defunct company.
We were definitely taking on water, right? In their eyes, for sure. But we were taking on water because I wasn't going to lay a bunch of people off.
Right.
They wanted us to lay a bunch of people off. And I didn't believe that was the right thing to do. And I believed that we needed to, keep those people, because if the thing did turn, then we were going to have a full staff, knowledgeable people, operators that were ready to rip. Right. And, timing wise, sometimes a guy just gets lucky timing wise, but I figured if I was going to we were all going to go down on the same ship, right? I wasn't going to just send half the crew overboard and then still keep the ship. It was either we're all going to win or we're all going to lose. Right. But it wasn't going to be just,
So that kind of goes into my next segue question for you, which is Brett Ekart's out there, and you get to be the face, and you get to handle, you get to come over here to Seattle, Portland, hang out with some, scrap guys and do the scrap business. Who's really driving the company for you, man? Tell me about your team and who those players are.
Dude, I got a guy that I played football with in college. Him and I played the same position, Tom Neal, who's actually the president of United Metals. I recruited him out of college. He had got married and moved to Lacey, Washington, really. Yeah, and then...
my hometown.
Yeah, he moved to Lacey. He was working for a company, because I think his wife at the time was from over here. He eventually came back, but before him, there was a guy that I had met in college through him named Brett Buxton, who handles all of our commercial business. So he introduced me to Brett, and Brett was going to college at U of I. So he introduced me to Brett, and so Brett had wanted to move. He was in Seattle. He moved back to Idaho because he's from Eastern Idaho, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking to come back to Idaho." I'm like, "Come over." This was in 05, 06. I'm like, "Come back to Idaho." So I recruited him first, and then another guy that is from Blackfoot. I got 5 people that all came from one small town in Idaho. But Brian Ferguson, our CFO, We were at the bar drinking one time with Brett Buxton and Tom was in town. We were partying, and Brian was working for Micron, and he was hating it. And he was a smart guy, and my mom was needing some accounting help. I was doing a bunch of the accounting with her, and he just so happened to have his resume in his pocket because he was trying to get another job out of Micron. And I was like, "Hey, you looking for another job?" He goes, "Yep." And I was kind of asking what he wanted to do, and I said, "Send me your resume." He had his back pocket. He goes, "I got this in my back pocket."
The dude had his resume in his back pocket.
So I took it. It's like such a random deal.
Yeah, because I'd be like, what a weirdo.
I woke up the next day pretty hungover, like with a pita in my hand, and I looked in my pocket and I had a resume. And I was,
not a girl's number, just
just a resume. I'm out there recruiting, right? And so I got him, talked to him, and then I kind of put him with my mom, and he's the CFO today because of all the training that he spent with my mom. And then Nick Snyder, who does a little bit of everything for us. I mean, dude, that guy is there's like a Swiss Army knife. Like he's probably the screw, the corkscrew, the scissors, the knife. That guy's a killer. And he started with us just running cans.
Yeah.
Just running pop cans.
Really?
And just worked his way up from working the recycling center.
Right.
It's been 10 years now. 8 years. And then Jay, the guy that runs our converter business, our reclaim business, that guy started with us when we had an electronics recycling division, and he just was dismantling electronics.
Just grinders.
Grinders. Everybody that's in any position in our business is because they're grinders. Right. We didn't hire any outside C-suite position guys. Like it's all fucking just grinders. Barry, the guy that runs our trucking company, that guy started by driving truck for my dad.
Yeah.
And dude, now he runs our whole, trucking division. Plus, he actually is in charge of basically purchasing and anything with equipment, whether it's maintenance or purchase of new equipment, everything runs through him first. And then obviously I get the last set of eyes, but I mean, if he doesn't sign off on it, I'm not signing off on it.
Right.
Like I won't sign off on anything he don't want. If he's like, yeah, I think this is a good piece, he knows it. And I'm not super mechanical. Like we were talking last night, change the oil in my truck, maybe. That's about as far as I'm not breaking anything down or this is not really my wheelhouse. But that guy can tear apart a whole truck and rebuild it.
Yeah.
So it's guys like that, man, that are
just pushing the company forward.
Yeah, just hustlers. Like I think I like to think like I said it, but like I say it a lot, but like I really believe in it. Like I only hire people that have grit and hustle. I don't care where you went to college.
I don't think
it doesn't fucking matter to me.
I don't think that's a bad business philosophy. I don't think you're gonna lose.
Yeah, because philosophy. And that's why in 15 rolled around, who am I gonna lay off? Like who am I gonna cut? Yeah. Like all these people that have just busted their ass to help me build this company.
Right.
Like I'm just gonna go walk in and whack half of them because the market's shitty.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna find a way to get someone to loan me some money to get through.
Right.
I don't know.
So in terms of, those are your people, but now let's talk about your leadership style in terms of how they lead and how maybe you lead as well too. There's obviously two styles of leadership, right? There's the truth speaker, which is just leaders that tell you how it is, they're transparent, they're 100%, which I think I tend to be more towards that side of leadership. And then you got peacekeepers, right? Uh-huh. Guys that don't really want conflict, kind of just wants to keep everything PC and don't want to, make sure nobody gets rubbed the wrong way in terms of their company. What's your guys' leadership style there?
I think that I listen to that Gary Vee a lot because I think he's got a lot of good business advice. But I think you can be an and guy, truly. You can be a guy that is honest with people and tells them the way you see it. But also I think there's a way of going about it and saying, this is where I see you going, this is where I see your position, or this is where I see, where you're fucking up or where you're doing a good job. But I think you can do it in a way that you're not an asshole. And I think you can, but I also think you also, we talked about this yesterday as well. I won't ever ask you to do something I'm not willing to do or I haven't done. Right? I think there's some form of leadership. I believe that to be true with you. When you're out there you know, when you walk in the yard or doing something, or, you know, whether it's in the office or outside, I would imagine because of the size of your company, just like the size of our company, you've probably done all the jobs, or you can, right? Like, that's important to me. Like, I mean, there's a few jobs that people are going to do a lot better than me, or probably most, like drive truck, run equipment. Like, those guys are doing that day in, day out. Like, they know that. They know they're going to be a ton better. But I would never ask you to do it if I wouldn't be willing to do it myself, right? And so I think there's that form of leadership is probably the most important to me. And
that's what's happening in United right now. Like,
it's everybody
top down level.
They've done all the jobs,
right?
Like, they're not. If you're in charge of a division for us, whether it's the pipe side of the business or the scrap side of the business, it's because you've done that job. Like, everybody below you, like, you've worked your way up to that position. Like, nobody handed you that position, which is important for me. So if we're going to hire, we try and hire within,
right,
to move up, give opportunity where people have earned it, and then, you know, backfill underneath, right? And I think that's a slower way to grow. Like, if you go buy 3 yards tomorrow, right? Like, you're going to want your people in there. Well, it's hard to peel 3 guys out of here, your main operation, and go plug them in these yards because you trust them.
Right.
Like, that's a tough way to grow, because now you rob Peter to pay Paul. So you have to, it's a slower way to grow. I mean, it's not just this max growth. We're doubling the size of our company tomorrow.
Right.
I think because that's where it starts getting real gray, and you don't have that ability to hire within. You know, it's just a kind of a slow, measured pace of pick your spots.
Yeah.
For us.
So you got 200 employees right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're in the same type of situation where we are, where we have a lot of open positions that we're looking to fill, and like we have we're getting constant feedback from potential employees that, you know, call me in September, like, call me when this market, you know, call me when all the stimulus goes away, call me when you know, I actually have to work, right?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You know, you got 200 spots. I mean, how many vacancies do you have? Are you filling those spots?
We could probably, we hover around that. We probably have, like, let's say 190, 185, depends on, you know, but we could probably use 25 more, right?
Right.
Like, we really could literally probably we could add 25 people.
Right.
And
are you finding them?
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, you get some potential. You get some people that, you know, but it's you can't go hire. It's hard to go hire 2 people, let alone 25 people right now, right? Especially some of the positions where, I mean, we need guys to ply stainless. We need guys to drive a truck.
Right.
We need guys to run, you know, a RB6000 baler. We need guys that can travel and go crush cars.
Another plug for Sierra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, or an Aljon 580, which I would love to buy an Aljon someday, but that's a whole nother story.
But David Little isn't giving you the right deal, or what?
Well, that's like a whole nother podcast. David Little knows why I won't buy an Aljon. Put it like that. It's not because Aljon doesn't make a good baler, because they do make a good one.
Right.
So we'll go. That's a whole.
I'll make sure that we send this to David so he can make right whatever.
Like I said, there's no editing needed.
Yeah.
Like, Aljon makes a good baler. I'll leave it at that.
So to get back to that, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, you can't hire, you're looking for that grittiness, that guy that's willing to start at the bottom and build up. Like, that's the United model, right? Like, mm-hmm. that's the fucking culture. Like, that's what you live, that's what you breathe. Like, and in this environment, like, how do you build that then? If you can't find anybody willing to do that,
well, you got to be patient. Like I had a meeting with our guys probably a month ago, and we just pulled back. Like, we were doing a lot of outside work and a lot of stuff, and I just said, no more, not for a while.
Yeah.
Because we got to get everybody back in-house and processing our material and handling our repairs, doing our work on our stuff right now. And then when we feel like we can hire enough people to go out and do more outside work, outside service, then we can have that conversation. But for now, it's more like sucking. I think less is more right now. Because I think the trend is everybody's trying to do more, push harder. And I'm kind of like, I've kind of prided myself in going against the grain. And right now, where everybody else is going for more, I'm trying to do less.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this isn't sustainable.
Well, which is interesting though, because most people are saying we're in the middle of a bull run right now. We're not necessarily at the beginning, right? We're kind of in the middle, and it still has legs on it, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of companies pushing forward. So if you get on your like prognosticating hat, right, and you're like, where's the scrap market going? Where's your take on it? What's your future of like the next 6 months of this
I feel
business?
like we have a good run in us, and I think that barring some like crazy like geopolitical event that comes out of left field,
right?
I think it sets up nicely for us. My thing is where I get concerned is when you're out there trying to hire 25 people, and that includes equipment operators, truck drivers, guys running like doing jobs that inherently are a little bit more on the risky side.
Right.
Is I don't want just any Tom, Dick, Harry off the street that can produce a driver's license in those positions, because you can bust your ass. I'll tell you like a good story. In 2008, the price of scrap was crazy, right? We were paying, I think, across our scale, $300 a ton, right? For tin and iron, across the scale.
In Boise.
Yeah, and we were selling it, I think it was like, at that price at the time, it was like 600 and something bucks a ton, right? But we couldn't get the material, and at this time, we only had our yard in Caldwell, and we had a little yard in Gooding that I had bought with my dad, and then we had our Mountain Home yard, and the scrap was coming in faster than we could process it and get it back out the door. So I walked the yard one day, and there's buses stacked up, there's shit stacked up. It looked like a rat trail through our yard, and I said, we can't do this, guys. Like, we're gonna hurt somebody, right? It became a safety issue.
Right.
So we just shut the doors. Like, we just closed the gates and said, we aren't going to let anybody in this yard, customer-wise, until we can get everything processed. Because what we're doing is we're making good money, but all it takes is one screw up,
right.
And you busted your ass for the last how many years to get to this point where you can make good money, and it just takes one stupid fail, right?
Right.
And it was become unsafe. So it was painful. Like, I was watching people drive right by our yard to our competitor, right? Like, day after day. For a week and a half, we shut down. We wouldn't let anybody in until we could process. Which you just being a competitive guy, like, that's a fucking killer, right?
Right, it's a kick in the nuts.
Oh, it's like, but it needed to be done.
It's a humility moment, for sure.
But the only way we could get this shit out was to do that. And, like, in hindsight, it was the best move we made, because 2 months later, the market took a shit. But we had processed all of our scrap, we got it loaded, and we got it out the door.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any accidents. So to me, like, that's where it felt like where we're going, is we're putting people in equipment, the potential to put people in equipment or trucks or whatever that aren't necessarily ready for the hustle and bustle pace that we're like trying to go.
Because it's a volume business.
It's a volume business.
Low margin, high volume, high risk, high reward sometimes, And
then, so I said, you know what, guys? Like, we're going to bust our ass out there trying to make money and buying scrap. And for what if we don't just back it off a little bit? Like, pull the foot back off the gas a hair and get through what we have. Because we got a lot of scrap in our yards again, right? But now multiply it from, say, 3 little yards in Idaho to times 7, 8 yards. Well, now we got a lot of inventory we got to get through. So do you want to get through it, like process it right now while you're setting up for a good market, or be out there chasing the next one and just bringing it in and piling it? I mean, there's like a balance in there. And I don't know, I'm not where the balance all the way is, but I know for us, the balance is like, let's kind of try and get through some of our own stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's just the reality that we all face.
Because you can't find the people. And if you can't find the people, there's no point to push the envelope until the federal government, people start doing something to encourage people to go back to work.
Right.
Like, and that's not happening anytime soon. No. We're probably 2 months away from it in Idaho.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit further out here.
Yeah. So, I mean, at what point do you just stretch the rubber band so tight that something's got to give, right?
Right. And so that's where you feel like the market might have the breaking point?
I feel like it's a labor that has the breaking point, not the market. I think the market's good because I think everybody else is fighting the same battle you and I are fighting. Yeah. They can't get people to process the material.
Yeah.
I mean, go try and buy a piece of equipment right now.
But then what happens once the market opens up? It just falls off? Like once all those people in September got to come back, or in August in Idaho, it just falls off? Like now you got enough production done, you're getting I still feel like inventories are at historical lows. I mean,
yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's, you know, I post some stuff on like LinkedIn. I get some of my comments on TikTok, and people are like, every yard I go to is full of scrap. I'm like, I bet they are, but is it finished scrap? Like, there's a difference between if I go to a yard and see a pile of scrap, like unless it's a shredder yard where they're running stuff through, right? That's different. But if I just go to a yard and I see scrap everywhere, like that doesn't mean it can be marketed or today, tomorrow. Like a lot of people don't realize, like, you bring the scrap in the door, and I don't care if it's brass or iron or whatever. Like, there's a process it goes through to get to be a finished good before it can go in a container, in a box, to the smelter. Like, it's not just, we don't just snap our fingers and all of a sudden it lands in a box and knows where to go. Right. Like, there's a whole process behind what we do, which I think is hidden, which, like, to the general public, they don't realize, like, what it goes into doing what we do every day.
Yeah,
right?
The optics of not fully understanding the business.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's a lot of scrap in your yard. I'm like, yeah, but how much of it's ready to go?
Yeah.
And that's where the people part comes in. So, in the trucking, like, how about transportation right now?
Right.
You understand the container business, like, that's your wheelhouse, not really mine. And you say containers are tight, right?
Well, I'm telling you, yeah. I mean, we're not able to get your loads out.
Yeah. So how about, like, trucking on, like, whether it's running end dumps or, like, stuff to a steel mill or stuff to the shredders? Like, how hard is it to get trucking for anything else? Is it hard for you guys here?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, and that goes back to the labor issue. I don't think that it's necessarily an issue with the trucks on the road as much as it's the asses in the seats. Mm-hmm. And same thing. This is a very niche business. Like, do we want people putting end dumps 45 feet high in the air, and things like that, with no training? You get back to that safety component where it's like risk versus reward. Yeah. And are our haulers willing to take that? Are we willing to take that as an employer?
So, like, let's go all the way. Like, you say you put an end dump, put 45 foot in the air, you tip it over, okay? Like, hopefully nobody gets hurt.
Right.
Hopefully the driver had a seatbelt on, everything, like, okay? Take that and then say, okay, now you have an end dump that you're using every single day to move material. How long does the guy have to wait to get another end dump right now? I mean, if you order end dumps, you might not get them until 22. So
I ordered one 3 months ago, and I'm getting it in July.
Yeah. Like, equipment's tight. Like, drivers are tight. There's just so much tightness. So, like, when it gets tight like that, for me, like, my natural reaction is, like, I'm gonna back it down a little bit. I operate much better when shit's going 8 ways sideways. When everybody's wants out of the business, that's when I want really in. When everybody wants in, I'm like, it might be time to get out. So you want to move that out? Yeah. I got some yards for you.
Okay. So yeah, good segue. So you're out here in Portland, Seattle market, right? So everybody's like, well, what the fuck's Brett doing out here, right? Because obviously Brett's planning the next move, right? So what's the next move for United? You coming out here to the West or something? Like, why are you here?
Dude, I do a lot of business out here, right? Like, I sell scrap to Brad, Detroit Scrap. Sell scrap.
Another plug.
To you, right? To Sutter Metals, plug. I sell scrap to Metro Metals.
Plug.
I sell scrap to more Steve Zusman and Charlie Neal.
Steve Zusman, Charlie Neal. All right, plug.
I sell scrap to Kirschman.
Schnitzer Steel.
Plug. I sell scrap to Danny Jones.
Plug. EG
so I'm gonna
Metals.
See him. Yeah. Yep. I sell scrap to Weinstein at Bob's.
Mike.
So, like, dude, I do a lot of business out here, right? Our trucks come out here.
Yep.
So it's been a while since I've even drove to Portland. I used to come here all the time when we were partners with Schnitzer,
right.
Twice a year, right?
Yeah.
And so for me to actually get out here and get to Portland is kind of good, Yeah. And then when's the last time? I was trying to think. I was telling my wife I was going to go to Tacoma. She's like, when's the last time you've been to Tacoma? And I was like, I think the last time I was in Tacoma was when Norm Simon still owned Joseph Simon.
Yeah.
And I brought my wife out here. We were just married. We weren't married for just but a couple years. And Norm, who I did a lot of business with, he was like, what are you doing in Tacoma? I was like, I came out here and I wanted to go to this Bruce Springsteen concert.
Okay.
Which was fucking terrible, by the way.
But, where was the venue? Tacoma Dome?
Yeah. I think was it Key Arena?
Oh, no, Key Arena?
Key Arena, right?
Okay.
And I told my wife, I'm like, oh, Bruce Springsteen, like, it's gonna be awesome. Like, and Norm goes, hey, you gonna go to that concert? And at the time, I was selling a bunch of scrap to Norm.
Yeah.
He goes, I'll get you tickets to that Bruce Springsteen concert. I'm like, sweet. So we came out here, her and I, and we just hung out in Tacoma, and then we stayed close to Key Arena. We walked over to the concert, and dude, Bruce Springsteen put on a shitty concert that day. I was really disappointed. Yeah, he didn't even play Born in the USA. Yeah. Nothing. Like, I'm like, dude. But anyways, long story short, that's the last time I was actually in Tacoma.
Is that culture still alive in this business? The Norm and Phil Simon culture? Like, anybody who's been in this business knows that culture, knows that, like, you know,
in pockets story. And I think that's what I'm like on the hunt for, like always, right? Is there's still like, I'm not a big corporate guy. Like, this is about as dressed up as I get, right? Like, I'm always on the hunt for like genuineness. Like, we were talking about social media the other day. Like, I would appreciate just a genuineness of it. Like, when people do it, just here's what I'm doing today, right? And I think that I'm always on the hunt for like the genuineness in the scrap industry. I enjoyed our conversation last night. You and I discussed like, you're a true scrap guy, right? Like, that's that's the business that you're in. Like, you live and breathe scrap. You know, sometimes you can get into like a real corporate atmosphere and everybody's just really siloed. Like, I'm only responsible for buying this. You know, I don't understand the operations of the yard. I don't understand the nuances of what it takes to run a business, you know? So the small operators out there, like, are the ones I probably have the most, like, connection with, and the old school guys that came from small operations, because they understand that they have more of a place in their heart for guys like you and me, because they know what it takes to do what we do every day, right? Like, to just grind and run, you know, the receivables, payables, the equipment, everything that goes into it.
Well, so, I think what's really interesting is that we are, like, in this industry, we're losing the real scrap guys, and there's this transition into scrap guys figuring out that, like, I don't have to actually own and process these physical commodities. Like, I can just buy paper now. Yeah. And so now we're turning into traders. A lot of the scrap guys are turning in, that used to be scrap guys, 100%. Are traders now of commodities instead of scrap guys. And they're two entirely different people.
The brokerage side, the trader side, the real scrap, the real scrap industry guys, like, it's like anything though, like in big businesses consolidating, like, you know, they're soaking up these smaller operations or these 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 yard facilities and just kind of putting them in the machine. Yeah. It's like farming, right?
Right.
The big farms just coming in there and kind of taking down the mom and pop operations. Right. So I think we're not like dissimilar in that. Like, there's a lot of similarities to that part of it for us. But that's why I'm out like chasing and enjoy spending time with like the genuine like scrap guys, you know? Danny Jones is a real scrap guy. Like, he is a guy that came from nothing in India and built up a brokerage business, had his own scrap yard, dissolved it, moved it to Texas, sold it, like, right. You know.
Went through all the challenges.
He's still a broker. He still understands, like, so I think he almost has more of an appreciation for the guys like you and I because he went down that road. Right. Like, he's not just a broker, right? He had his own yard, his own people problems, his own hiring problems, his own firing problems, like all the stuff that we battle every day. Yeah. Like, I think he has a genuine appreciation for it now because he actually did it.
Right.
You know, like, to go all the way full circle to the guys that, you know, have run a business, like the guys that really understand it, the guys that actually done it. Right. You know? So, and that's why I'm out here. Like, plus it's good. It's good to get out of Dodge. I've been, you know, coaching some flag football with my kids, and I'm like, all right, you guys are gonna have to manage for a while.
Yeah, I mean, you can only hang out with 10-year-olds for so long.
I don't know until I want to go have like I gotta have some vodka soda and
I gotta have some adult time.
For sure.
Cool. Hey, well, thanks very much for chatting with us today, man.
Dude, thanks for the invite, man. Thanks for showing me the yard. I've been wanting to see your yard. I've been seeing pictures of it on social media. Like, this is probably a big draw for me. I'm a scrapyard like junkie. I want to go see. Yeah. I'll never go somewhere, and as long as I'm allowed to take a picture, I'll always find 1 or 2 things to take a picture of. Yeah. That I'm like, that, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, no, hopefully we didn't disappoint, you know. And,
no, you guys got a beautiful yard.
Hey, thank you.
I mean, it's capped. It's nice. It's like I've been to a lot of scrap yards in my life, but you can tell when you go to somebody's yard and they take pride in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they run a clean operation, and that's what you guys are doing.
Hey,
so
thank you very much.
Yeah.